ITNation Connect 2024 was last week. It's the Monday after. Huge success. Largest MSP event of the year. So many new announcements. So many new exciting things going on. We had a great time. We had Podcasters Row for the first time ever at an MSP event, by the way, not just IT Nation, where we had 9 podcasters set up in their own area, in a high traffic area, just having conversations with attendees, MSPs, with vendors, with ConnectWise staff. Just a wonderful event. Ushering the new CEO, Manny Ravello, as Jason McGee exits, and lots of great new product announcements. I personally had a speaking session there as well, which was a great success. How to help MSPs in sales and marketing with podcasting. There was great after parties with Universal and Stone Temple Pilots, and Tony Hawk spoke, and it was an incredible event. We recorded many conversations, and the following is one of the conversations, and they were all great. It was a high traffic area, so they might be a little noisy, but just a great event. I encourage everyone to consider going to it. Thanks so much for listening.
Hi, I'm Joey Pinz, and here's my 45-second introduction. After starting my business in the 90s, I started developing poor habits of eating in my diet because of working way too much. I found myself at 340 pounds. The doctor told me if I don't lose the weight, I'm not going to see my daughter graduate. I took the next 7 months, lost 130 pounds. People ask me, how'd you do it? What's the secret? I need to lose weight. How'd you do it? How did I lose the weight? Just one word: discipline. I've had other successes in life, and I attribute them all to discipline. Now, I'm not the king of discipline, but I believe that it can help all of us. Friends convinced me to start a podcast. The podcast mission: how do we better ourselves and society? I talk to interesting people in health, fitness, sport, wellness, business, technology, science, art, and culture. And I eventually asked them how discipline plays a role in their life. Podcast vision: growth through learning from others. One more thing. Sorry. Put this on. Put the lavalier on.
Okay.
So this is back up right here, right there. Put it on your lapel. We'll get it, Cole.
All right.
All right. West Dallas.
West Texas,
Ah.
like Midland, Odessa. That's where my parents
Odessa.
lived. So I was there till I was like 6 years old. Then I moved to like North Dallas area. Lived there until I went off to college. Originally went up to University of Illinois,
Whoa.
which is a big change for a
Yes.
Texas kid. So
Yeah.
went all the way up there, spent a year in Illinois, and then came back and spent 4 years at Texas A&M. So I'm a proud Aggie.
Aggie. I've been
Yeah.
to College Station.
Have you really?
Yeah, I have. I saw a game.
Oh,
I had a great friend
you're,
there.
You're one of the few
You know,
that
we
is
would
lucky.
go arm in
yeah.
arm, and that was freaking great.
I don't think people realize how incredible that is. I had and I'll kind of tell you how I ended up there. But a friend that I made while I was living in England, he lives in the U.S. now, and I finally got to take him to a game last year.
Wow.
I was like, look, all college football is wild for
Yes.
somebody from Europe. I was like, A&M is really.
What do you
special.
think? So he's a big soccer guy, I'm sure.
Rugby, actually, rugby and then soccer.
Ah.
But man, he loved it. He was like, "This is incredible." He's like, just the way people tailgate around it, like just the environment. It's just completely different. So that was a really cool experience. So I spent 4 years there, and then I moved around Texas a bunch. So I moved to Houston right after graduated. Spent a couple months there.
Jeez.
Then I got a territory. I wanted to be like an outside sales rep. I spent my first like 8 years out of college in the electrical industry.
Whoa.
So I was in electrical wholesale, selling wire and breakers, and the more interesting stuff was like variable frequency drives, and, programmable logics and stuff like that for manufacturing. So I started then moving around the U.S. I was like in the Austin area, covered all the way into South Texas, and anyways, long story short, I ended up getting married, and I moved back to Dallas. So my wife and I did long distance for like 3 years. Moved back to Dallas, where she was starting her graduate program, and then I was like, hey, let's move to Colorado. I was like, I think I want to get out of the electrical industry.
You just picked Colorado.
There were a few places. I knew I wanted to be in tech. I knew I wanted to leave Texas. And I knew I didn't want to go to San Francisco.
Huh.
So then it was like we were kind of looking at like a few areas in North Carolina, so like the Raleigh area, and then we looked at Denver, and then Baltimore was on the list, but loosely. So like we just kind of narrowed down with some areas that had good tech companies, and I just started applying for jobs, and my wife also had to get a clinical for her. She's a physical therapist, so there were two things we were trying to align. Ended up meeting someone. Actually, he's now the head of the U.S. business for PAX 8.
Huh.
But Lane Brandon is a family friend of mine.
Nice.
Nick Heddy had worked for him at PAX 8.
Nick's
Nick
great guy.
Heddy worked for him at CBeyond. And Lane was like, "Hey, I'll make an intro here. Maybe Nick's got a job for you." I always give him a ton of crap because I'm like, Lane, I could have come and worked for you. I was like, but instead you pushed me off to Nick.
Nice.
But anyways, I started at PAX 8 in 2017, moved to Denver, and that kind of like was a big pivot in mine and my wife's lives. Has just changed a lot for us. So I started in 2017 as an account manager. I was.
Well, you are account manager?
I think I did. I think I worked with
funny?
you. Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
the name's real familiar.
We've definitely crossed paths.
Yeah.
I think I dealt with you when I was the first account manager, and then you were building a dashboard.
Sure.
And I was running revenue operations where we were looking at partnerships, and I remember you and I had a few conversations around that as
Isn't
well.
that funny?
Yeah.
Huh.
So I've been there. I spent almost 7 years at PAX 8.
Wow. Great company.
Yeah, so my hiring class was the first that put us over 100 employees.
Wow.
And so that was like, yeah, I came in at a really cool time because that like the whole business completely changed, right? Like we were figuring out how to represent Microsoft. We were like really doubling down on that relationship. Our line card was growing. We had a great partnership with ConnectWise. Everything was like really aligning for some incredible growth. So yeah, that was a pivot for me and for the company. And I guess you want me to just keep going on
Please.
A little bit of intro? Okay. The long form intro. I in about 2018, into 2018, I expressed interest in our international expansion. Talked to Nick about it a few times, and then I ended up kind of loosely taking responsibility for it while doing my other job. And then officially at the end of 2019, I became vice president international and led our global expansion.
Huh.
And so beginning of 2020, which by the way is a horrible time to work on global expansion.
Yes.
I pushed forward anyways. I moved my wife and I over to England right when they finished their first lockdown. We came right in on the coattails of that.
Wow.
Established residency and just made sure we figured out how to launch the business. Led the company through 3 acquisitions. Grew that business from 0 to about 130 million in annualized revenue. We recruited thousands of partners. It was an incredible opportunity replicating the business over there. Then I moved back. Nick had expressed interest in having me come back and work on kind of strategic engagements, M&A, things like that in the U.S. So that's what I was doing for the last 2 years. So this opportunity with Fifth Wall. Yeah, Fifth Wall came up. So we were looking at cyber insurance at PAX 8, and we were looking at how, if any, should PAX 8 represent the cyber insurance market.
Yeah.
It's like PAX 8 doesn't do things by the standard rules, right?
That's
So
true.
we're like, what does the industry actually need? They don't need a partnership. They don't need like another sales initiative. They need something that's really substantially different and impactful to the industry. So we looked really intently at that, like how do MSPs need to participate in this line of the commerce, right? Like how they engage with this part of the market. And without too much detail, we established a way we wanted to do it, but we decided we were going to. We decided it was better to maybe just do a partnership with a company and do an investment, and that's where I was asked to go work and run Fifth Wall.
I see.
And so we're lightly associated, still work together, but
Lightly associated.
yeah, like a commercial partnership.
I see.
And we have some common investors.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So it's cyber insurance. What's the difference between insurance and warranty?
That's a great question. I'll give you my answer from a limited knowledge. I'm not, so I should have said a disclaimer when I mentioned insurance. I've only been in it 60 days.
Wow.
And I'm not licensed to sell insurance or warranties. I'm working on it. But warranties are a looser way to associate a financial coverage, right? And they're backed by a different part of the market, and they're regulated by a different part of the market. Where insurance is more broadly just built to cover certain types of losses, and warranties are built to cover a certain implementation or a certain part of a product. They are very complementary if they're done right.
Right. If they're
Just
done
like
right.
with a car, right? Like you don't. If in a perfect world, you'd have a car warranty,
Right.
covered by a manufacturer, and then you would buy insurance,
Right.
Because like a warranty doesn't cover
An
you
accident.
hitting someone,
Right. Right.
It covers like the knob falling off.
Faulty. Yeah. Yeah.
You're like, oh, my stereo doesn't turn on today, and I
Right.
bought this car 3 months
Right.
ago.
Yeah,
That's a warranty,
that's
right?
a warranty issue.
But if you hit a pedestrian, Ford's not going to be like, oh, don't worry, your warranty's got you, right? Like, so
right.
there's a distinct difference in that comparison. And I think one of the things that's misunderstood today is like, it's easy when we talk about auto. When you start talking about cyber,
the
which you're talking about
tools.
insuring an intangible thing, it changes the dialogue
It
and
sure
the concept, or at least the comparison of it, right? So they're very complementary, but the industry's figuring out how do they complement each other. You know, does a warranty cover the first part of insurance? Does it cover maybe the tools you're using versus the way they're being used, right? Like, I think once you look at insurance, you have cyber insurance, you have tech E&O, and that shows the distinction, right? Because a customer consumes products and they have cyber insurance on the vulnerabilities they could have from that, whereas technology errors and emissions is cyber insurance plus. And I think that maybe gives us an insight into where warranties could fit, because when you compare it to the auto industry, it's like you need something to cover the tools you use and the way you use them, but you need also something to cover you to your exposure and your risk. This comparison of a collision or some type of wreck, right? So I think that's something that is very important to continue to consider, because warranties were around our space for a while,
Sure.
right? Like Sentinel One, when they were going through the
this.
crazy growth, like they did a really good job of offering. They're like, look, if you use our product right, like we have a warranty, like it's on the product, it's with it, yeah.
Yeah. So when you're talking to MSPs about cyber insurance, what's their big roadblock?
I think a lot of MSPs aren't really sure how to participate.
Right.
So one of the things I noticed that was really interesting is I noticed a couple things. So I'll give you a perspective from the insurance side. Insurance carriers, when we first started looking at this, insurance carriers did not want to work with MSPs, and they're still pretty resistant. I mean, Coalition's here today, right? Like, Coalition's an incredible partner of ours. We rep their offerings. We work with them to underwrite customers. But you see Coalition's now making investment. The first insurance conference I went to, which I had to make up a broker company, I'm like, I got to go figure these guys out. So we went to an industry-only insurance conference down in Austin. I can't even remember what it was called. I literally just Googled insurance conferences, and I went to the first one available. What was interesting is anytime I told them, oh, we work with the MSP space and do this, man, the insurance industry's like, oh, MSPs are, they're part of the problem. They're part of the problem. I'm like, what do you mean they're part of the problem? I'm like, they're the ones that are actually putting their hands on the car, so to speak, right? Like, they're the ones trying
in
to,
the trenches.
I'm like, why are they the issue? I'm like, is it not
because they were attacked?
It's because of what they deem as an aggregation of risk.
Because
I'm like, but that's like saying that you won't insure anybody's car that goes to one garage because that same mechanic works on 7 other cars. And so I understand that there's logic there, but I think it's a misnomenclature that needs to be overcome.
Certainly.
And so, that was the first appeal. And then once we talked to MSPs, I realized a lot of times MSPs are just like, hey, look, I've got insurance carriers coming in telling my customer stuff. And actually, it's brokers. It's your local insurance agent. I got commercial agents coming in and telling my customer to do this or don't do that. Or even worse, they're going, hey, I bought this insurance. I need to install this product. And MSPs are like, what do you mean? That's not on our stack. We don't work with that. And they're like, yeah, but I paid $2,000 for this policy, and they told me I could keep this rate if I installed their product.
Wow.
And what I really noticed, MSPs are just like, hey, look, we want to make sure that we're in this conversation. at minimum. At best, we'd like to control or at least be the lead. Stay the technical advisor and lead this conversation. I think, at the core of it, that's what everybody's figuring out. Because cyber insurance is the fastest growing insurance segment
Is it really?
in the world. Yeah,
It makes
It's
sense.
grown at 25% CAGR every year.
Wow.
So this year, the cyber insurance market is about $16 billion.
Jesus.
2032, it's gonna be $120 billion.
Wow.
It's gonna grow by about 10x, right? Maybe even more. That's without any regulation or any programs from the government. But it's one of our greatest threats, right? Like a cyber attack on 15% of the SMB market, and this has happened, right? Like there was something really prominent that happened. It might have been like 5 or 6 months ago, but there's a program called CDK in the auto industry, and their whole system got shut down for like a week.
Wow.
And all these
they were attacked?
all these auto dealership groups went back to pen and paper.
Unbelievable.
And it impacted revenue. It impacted the ability to do financing.
I didn't hear about this. Why wasn't this in the news?
It was. It's auto dealership
Yeah,
groups.
yeah,
it's
yeah,
a little bit,
yeah,
but it was a big deal in the insurance industry because they're like, oh man, this isn't just about MSPs or about CrowdStrike and SentinelOne. It's much more intimate than that. It's there are exposures everywhere. It's like it's the employees, it's the industry, it's the line of business application. Right, and so this idea of exposure management is a big topic in the insurance space.
Sure is.
And so the first thing is just making sure that the MSP is the primary constituent in that initial discovery, right? Understanding like what the customer needs and then being kind of the liaison to do it, right? Because when they're taken out of the conversation, it puts the business owner in a really awkward position.
Wow.
So they're like, I need my IT advisor to answer all these questions.
Right.
Everybody thinks insurance is trying not to pay claims. Joe, the majority of the reasons people don't pay that claims don't get paid is because people are unknowingly lying on their submissions.
Wow.
They're saying they have MFA installed and implemented. The insurance company does a review, and they're like, you don't have MFA.
Wow.
You said yes to this question. Now, look, I don't know how prevalent that is, but that is a very common thing. And a lot of times it's because MSPs can't or aren't involved in the insurance process.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And often the MSP themselves needs to get insurance. Do you find that there's a sell to as much as a sell through?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think the first thing is an MSP needs to have technology, especially after CrowdStrike wouldn't have actually been able to, it wouldn't have necessarily covered that in most instances because it wasn't necessarily an attack and it didn't have direct exposure. But let's say something happened with ConnectWise, right? Or it's more commonly is probably just like a technician missed something or something snuck through, and that errors and omissions gives you extension into your clients as well, like where your coverage is not just your business, but it's also your customer's business, right?
Wow.
Because it's in the first 60 days leading Fifth Wall, some of the conversations about cyber insurance have been interesting because a lot of people still don't understand what it is. People are like, well, what do I need cyber insurance for? And this is not in our space, but like meeting somebody who owns a trucking company or a construction.
Sure.
Yeah, right? I mean, some of them prominent, right? Some are running 20, 30, $40 million businesses. They're like, well, why do I need that? Like, I don't have a lot of data. It's like, this isn't just about data. This is about a fraudulent wire. This is about one of your systems going down. This is about like, well, and what a lot of them don't realize is a system goes down and their inability to collect revenue. Cyber insurance covers that. And so like it goes much further than just like, oh, my customer's data has now, been leaked. That's what you hear about, but cyber insurance is much more prevalent that you have money taken out of your bank account by a fraudulent actor.
Cole, has there been anything in the last month or so that you changed your mind on?
Changed my mind on. I assume related to
Anything.
the business.
Anything. Not really. Anything.
I don't know. Maybe I've grown more confident in, what's happening in the cyber insurance market. I think that's one of the only epiphanies I had was that number I gave you, 120 billion, that used to be 80 billion. The
Jeez.
forecast for the industry went up by $40 billion. And every time I think about that, I'm like,
By $40 billion.
$40 billion. 7 years from now, the projection went from 80 billion to 120 billion. And when I think about that in real terms, I'm like, that is insane. From a $16 billion market today to 120 billion. You know, I went to Canales, North America Forums, and I love that event. They do a great job, like curating content, sharing their research and stuff. Jay McBain, obviously, is an incredible, representative of the MSP market. Their opening keynote, they talked about cyber insurance.
Wow.
Steve talked about cyber insurance, and he said, if you're not participating, either directly or indirectly, in cyber insurance, the market will pass you by. And his general thought was just like, look, everybody's going to have to be involved in this if you're in the IT space, whether it's a hardware vendor, whether it's a marketplace, whether it's a security ISV, whether you're a line of business application. Cyber insurance impacts all of us, and it's one of the greatest threats to our economy. I mean, 15%. Could you imagine point of sale system for restaurants having that down for 2 weeks and impacting 15% of all the restaurants in the U.S.?
Wow.
Think about the knock-on effect, right? Like, they can't collect revenue. They can't pay people. People can't pay their bills. The impact just for 10 to 20% of the S&B market would be catastrophic. Right? Like, so it's on a practical level, it's a big deal, right? Commercially, it's a really big deal. But even from more of a theoretical level, it's like, this is why, digital warfare is probably much more lethal than any physical warfare between, in the geopolitical landscape. Our economy, and it's not just restaurants, it's all the software and services that the U.S. either aggregates or executes on. And it's like, if you fragment that for long enough, it could have a really, really bad ripple effect.
So we're here at ITNation Connect in Orlando. It's the biggest MSP event of the year. What's your message to the MSPs? What are some of your goals here, Cole? We hear the loud stuff going behind us. I hope all this audio is coming through well. What are some of your goals here?
I'm just here to connect, right? I think opportunity to have some conversations like this are really exciting. We're we've been in the MSP space for about 2 years. We're now really focused on executing a lot of our MSP partnerships and building some technology to make that more intuitive and comfortable for the MSP. I think one of the big things for us outside of just the event is that MSPs need to participate. And that loosely today, that just means if they're not talking about it, someone else is. The same rule that brought the break-fix world into the MSP world, that same mentality needs to be approached with cyber insurance. Now, I'm not suggesting another change in business model. All I'm saying is, if you don't talk about it, somebody else will. And I'm not talking about another MSP. You'll have insurance brokers in there telling your client about cyber insurance. Cyber insurance directly relates to the products that the MSP manages and gets paid to manage. So if MSPs aren't directly driving that conversation in some way, shape, or form, even if it's just asking the client about cyber insurance, then someone else will. And that is not a place where they want to be decentralized from being the primary driver of that dialogue.
So Cole, when I started my MSP back in the 90s, I'm a little bit older than you. I was not paying attention to myself, poor habits. I got myself up to 340 pounds.
Yeah.
Doctor says to me, if I don't lose the weight, you're not going to see your daughter graduate. Scared me. So I spent the next 6-7 months, lost about 130 pounds. People ask me
Over
how.
6 or 7 months?
Yeah.
Very impressive.
Yeah. And people ask me how, there's this, secret. I say discipline. That's how, I got a routine, I got, willpower, etc. I wonder how discipline plays a role in your life, Cole Knuth.
I'm a very atypical guy. I would say
atypical.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I've had some success, and I'd be a fool to say that I'm very loose with discipline and whatever. You can't execute on some of the things I did in Europe without discipline. But I believe in just general manifestation. And so instead of, habit, yeah, I don't know if I've ever said it that way. It sounds weird saying general manifestation, but I truly believe that having a very declared vision for something, and it could be small things. It could be weight loss. It could be I'm going to build a business. It could be I'm going to disrupt an industry. It could be I'm going to buy a car. I believe that visualization and unfettered, unfiltered belief that you can is the first thing, right? And like, actually changing your mind that you want to do something, whether you can implement small habits, it will lead to change if you have a strong enough will.
Interesting.
Because man, if people ask me, they're like, "Are you a disciplined person?" I'm probably like, "No, I live life purely on, I live it off the interactions I have and the ability to enjoy life. I love conversations. It's one of the reasons I love coming to events like this. Like, so many incredible people in our community. I want to just talk and meet with them. Right?
Yeah.
I don't need to like have some really profound sense of self from a conversation. I love meeting and exploring friendships and partnerships and relationships and so like that general like approach I think is somewhat laissez-faire and just open. And so like obviously with the things I set out to do, there has to be some discipline that creeps in, but it's like once I make my mind up about something, it starts shaping everything I do on a daily basis. Like I have and my mom would probably be laughing, right? She's like, I have this like insatiable declaration to do something. And I've gone and done really incredible things, even before I came to the IT industry, right? Like at 25 years old, I was like, I'm going to go set up an electrical distributor in West Texas. And I did. I went and built it from $0 to $12 million in 2 years.
Wow.
And they're like, that's really impressive. How'd you do it? I'm like, I don't know. On to the next thing, right? Like I just kept going. But like, it's just everyone's like, why? Like, how does that come about? I'm like, I see something. I'm like, oh, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that thing. I'm going to do that thing, right?
Very
So like
cool.
I'm on a weight loss journey as well, right? So but I was like, I'm just gonna keep it simple. I know myself, and I know this. That like you got to keep it simple, stupid, right?
Sure.
Like SRSR, right? Simple, repeatable, scalable, reliable. If you do that with any process, it always becomes. So maybe that's a little bit of my discipline, right?
Maybe.
Just make it like. So it's just like I just give up like 2 things this year. Give up beer and bread. And I'm like, those are easy enough for me, right? I can still go to conferences, I can still hang out at the bar, but it was enough of a lifestyle change but it's once I decided I was doing that, I do not break from it at all. Like I am unwavering until something new comes in. And so that's generally like success in business, success in my family. My wife would probably laugh because like I am very, I make declarations a lot. I'm like, hey, look, I'm happy to have more kids, but we have like 3 months. She's like, why 3 months? I'm like, because I'm about to switch gears. I'm gonna be fully dedicated to something new, and so like that's just how I live my life, right? Like I'm really open minded. So like it's funny when we go on like vacation, I don't mind just floating around the town, but that needs to be our thing. As funny as that sounds, like
Very interesting.
what are we gonna do tomorrow? We're just gonna walk around. Okay, sure. Nothing scheduled. We're not going on any tours. Because then I get in a mindset. I'm like, I'm gonna do that with my full dedication. And so like I've always just like made these really like focused decisions. I'm gonna do that thing, and it could be something I'm gonna do the next day. It could be something I'm gonna do next year. It could be an endeavor like a business, like solving the cyber insurance market. You know. And I believe that creates discipline naturally,
does.
right? Because
Yeah.
it shapes your subconscious. The subconscious is the most powerful thing humans have.
Very interesting. Cole, thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah.
It was a really great conversation. I'm finally glad. Looks like we met before, and now we're reconnected.
We hadn't met like this.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure.
This kind of
Face to
conversations,
face.
and a more intimate conversation,
More so.
Yeah.
Thanks so much,
Yeah,
Cole.
thank you.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with 1 or 2 of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations.